comes to mind when you think about capitalism? Grit, grind, debt, stress, competition, or the rat race? Or do you think about the freedom that capitalism offers? The freedom to travel, to own a big house, to be able to make enough money to support your family, to relax and retire in a lap of luxury, to be worshipped and adorned by all? We all understand that capitalism has its pitfalls. There are movies like The Menu and Squid Game and The Triangle of Sadness, and even television series like The White Lotus that shows the hardships of capitalism. More and more people are quiet quitting, leaving their six-figure jobs because they simply don't feel fulfilled. But others are choosing to live a simple life of minimalism, embracing a slower pace where they can prioritize happiness, love, family, over hard work and success. Society is awakening, and we're coming to the realization that capitalism as a whole may very well be a path to spiritual enlightenment. I'm going to explain to you how and why in this video, so please stay tuned. I'm not sure when this anti-capitalist talk started. There are always deviants in the underbellies of major cities all across the United States. Naturally, they use dirty and forbidden words like socialism and welfare to institute change. Then great movies came out, emulating many of the frustrations that people all over the world were feeling. There was Parasite and Squid Game, and most recently, The White Lotus. All these movies outlines the pitfalls of capitalism and how it creates large disparity gaps within a nation. However, none of these movies really touch on the fact that capitalism can be a path to spiritual enlightenment. No one except for the great classic, Sorry to Bother You. I think that this movie falls into the love-hate category. Either you love it or you hate it. I love it. I have to say this is probably one of the most original movies that I've seen in the last decade, and is loaded with so many secret meanings and hidden messages. The most important one being that we can truly find enlightenment by being capitalist pigs. Let me explain. You see, there are really three paths to enlightenment. The first is to withstand from all earthly pleasures, to lock yourself up in a temple or cave and meditate for hours until you either go crazy or you have a major epiphany. The second is to live a long and tedious life of suffering. This is a life where you're constantly being picked on and bullied and talked about and backstabbed and berated. You examine each interaction and decide how you can change from those interactions. The third way is through pure debauchery. This path allows you to be wild, to satisfy all your earthly pleasures to a point of debauchery. The third path of enlightenment is all about gluttony and greed. You eat until your belly is about to pop. You have sex until you're physically exhausted. You buy everything you can get your hands on. You do this until you are literally sick.
And look here, young blood, we don't cry about the shit that should be. We just thrive in what is, and what is opportunity.
Then, when you have everything you ever wanted and you're still not fulfilled, you begin to ask yourself one very important question. What is the true meaning of life? This was Cassius Green's story in Sorry to Bother You. Cassius Green was a young guy struggling in Oakland, California. His father seemed to have passed on, and the only living relative he seems to have is his diabetic uncle. Only his uncle is living in dire straits. The house is falling apart and he is behind on his mortgage. Cassius and his uncle aren't the only ones living hand to mouth. A quick look around Oakland and we can see the homeless, squatting in tents and cars, and of course working at dead-end jobs. Speaking of dead-end jobs, Cassius lands one of the worst and most degrading jobs known to man, being a telemarketer. He faces a great deal of rejection before he adopts the white voice, which allows him to excel at his position and climb all the way to the top.
I'd like to dedicate this imbibing of intoxicating elixirs. Here's to becoming a power caller.
Once Cassius is a power caller, he is blinded by the money, the fame, and the power. He betrays and abandons his friends and breaks up with his girlfriend. However, this does not deter Cassius from climbing up that corporate ladder. One meeting with Steve Liff and he realizes that worry-free workers are being turned into hybrid horse people.
No, our workers do not sign contracts under threats of physical violence. So therefore, the comparison to slavery is just ludicrous and offensive.
Now, this is when Cassius' consciousness gets the best of him, and he finally realizes that he needs to put a stop to Steve Liff and his worry-free organization.
This is where the magic happens, baby. NTV Spots, Worry-Free Edition. Hole Puncher, Jim Elman.
Only Steve Liff has become more powerful. He is backed by the state and federal congressmen and even senators. And the people of Oakland seem to adore him, despite the fact that he's not only destroying people's lives, but humanity. The best thing about this movie is that it's been told before. It was Odin who hung himself from a tree to receive more knowledge in Norse mythology. In the Ifa pantheon, it was Chango who died from overindulgence. The third path is all about self-indulgence, where you begin to ask yourself, is there something more? Odin was able to attain knowledge and see things from an entirely different perspective, unlike Pachai, who chose to look away and ignore the harm that he was inflicting on others. Chango, a mighty and vicious king in Yorubaland, began to understand how his cruelty adversely affected his brethren. Cassius slowly begins to see that riches come with a hefty price, and in the end, he paid that price. Now, there are many people who believe that only rich people can become enlightened. Poor people are living in such a state of scarcity that they will never be able to get their needs met. They'll never have a surplus, they can never be frivolous. To say it another way, poor people can't think beyond their stomachs. Now, there are some conspiracy theorists who believe that capitalist pigs create an environment of scarcity so that poor people are forced to take on lower wages.
A misguided midget asshole with dreams of ruling the world. Yeah, also from Kew Gardens.
As a result of this, competition stiffens and people become more tribal, allowing their primal instincts to take over. This is a process of degradation that takes people further and further away from spiritual enlightenment.
Cell phones can only work with a mineral coltan, which is found in Africa's Congo. The profit involved in this has created hardship and wars.
However, those of us living in the United States are at the top of the pile. Yes, we have stress, but at the same time, we have access to more goods and services than others all over the world. Now, I would argue that maybe we have a little bit too much of these things. As a result, society is shifting. We're asking ourselves, what's the point? What's the point of working 80 plus hours a week at a job that's going to axe us if we make just one little mistake? What's the point of having fancy, expensive cars that are parked most of the time? What's the point of hating different races of people when we innately understand that they are suffering from the same problems as we are? What's the point of going into debt to get a college degree when people in high school are making six figures? What's the point of indulging in earthly pleasures when we know we are not going to be fulfilled? Once we become enlightened, we can see the world for what it truly is. And then we can begin to make decisions that are not only good for ourselves, but for all of humankind. And that is what spiritual enlightenment is all about, my friend. So this was another video essay by the Modern Mystic. Peace out.